All right, welcome everyone to SirAntwi Education channel, grade 12. Today we are going to focus on a theory, specifically to see the detailed study tips, what you must do. And I know in most cases, learners struggle with the theory as compared to the practical. But then when you ask majority of learners, they will tell you theory is easier, but then I believe theory is where learners do not get a lot of marks. So today we are going to make sure that we cover all the detailed study tips. I've compiled the topics that you need to know from grade 10. Remember the theory questions, they set it from grade 10, not just grade 12 content. So I've compiled for each the grade 10, grade 11, and then grade 12 concept. And then also answers to previous question papers, we will discuss them. So please, if you have any question, don't forget to add it in the comment section. If there's any question that is giving you a problem, you can type it or you ask. I will always check that aspect. Right. So without wasting much time, let's move straight to the first concept, which is system technologies. And in most cases, system technologies covers question 4 and then 8, question 4, question 9, and then 10. Then also multiple choice. That's section A, or I must say section A. Right, so that is the system technology, the question number that you must always watch out for. Question 4 being 25 marks, question 9, 25, question 10 also 25, and then section A also 25. So all in all, you might be getting about 1/3 of the entire paper being system technology. That is 50 marks. So in most cases, system technologies will be covering about 50 marks. Now, the first thing that we should know from system technology is the definition of a computer. From our grade 10, we know that computers are electronic devices. The keywords are very, very important when dealing with the theory concept. Don't forget to always pick the keyword. So this lesson, I will always be highlighting the keyword for everybody. So now, in this situation, the keyword here is electronic device. That's the definition of a computer that produce or that process data into information. So they process it into information. Right. Now, again, you have to know different types of computers in terms of the purpose. One is the dedicated or the embedded computers. Those are the devices for specific tasks. So these are the key where they are only performing a specific task like ATM or GPS. So they can ask you dedicated or embedded systems. And then the general purpose computers, or sometimes they call it all-in-one computers. So they are all the same. Dedicated or all-in-one computers. They perform many tasks. For example, they can be used to type, to do so many tasks, to type, and then also play games. So this type of computers, in most cases, they do what you call you can use for multitasking. That is, you can do so many tasks at the same time. So you can do so many tasks at the same time using the general purpose computers. Right. Again, you must also know under the basic concept, the data, information, and then knowledge, and then conclusion. In grade 12, you will have to differentiate between these concepts. Data is raw facts. and figures that are meaningless. So here the key word is meaningless, raw facts and figures. And then the raw facts and figures could be numbers. When we talk about raw facts and figures, they can ask you that question. Also take note, it could be numbers, it could be names, or let's say text, and so on. So these are the raw facts and figures that are yet to be processed. They are just meaningless. They are yet to be processed. Then the information becomes the processed data that is meaningful. The processed data that is meaningful. Like for instance, average age is, or average amount is 20%. So that becomes an information. Then the knowledge is applying the information. If you know, okay, let me give the example from this one, like saying cat mark. Your cat mark is 20. Your cat mark is 20. So that's the data, it's just raw number, which is meaningless. Now, the information, when you process them, let's say you have your cat mark, you convert it to percentage, or you find the average for paper 1 and paper 2, then it becomes what? Information. So the information from here, example, average for paper 1, and then paper 2, maybe it's 50%. So this one, when you do the calculation, because average is meaningful, you can now understand something from it. Now, the knowledge becomes applying the information. So if you know that your cat mark for the term is 50%, you can now gain some knowledge by applying some information. That means like you pass cat, you got cat mark with an average mark. Now, after that, then you can also make a conclusion out of it. That is making a decision based on what you know. So if you know that you pass cat, then you need to make sure that you make a decision on it. Like for instance, you need to improve. Like here you can say, next term I must improve. I must practice more. Paper 1, maybe Excel or what, then you know that maybe it's Excel that made you lose a lot of marks, so you need to practice more for next term in paper 1. And that is a conclusion. So you can be given a scenario, then they can ask you to deduce the data, the information, the knowledge, and conclusion out of it. So these are the examples that I've also given. So you must take note of that. Right. Then the role of ICT in our daily life. ICT helps us in so many ways. Communication, like what we are doing now. I'm staying somewhere, teaching you, collaboration, watching the videos on YouTube and all sorts of things. Those are the roles ICT play in our daily life and also in workplace. So they can ask you to give one or two roles ICT play in our daily life. For instance, communication becomes easier. You can talk to anybody regardless of the location. You can make a lot of decisions based on ICT, global connectivity in homes and then workplaces. So, and many more. You can talk about so many things, not limited to this, but then you need to know at least two of them. And then the reasons for using computer. Why do we need computer? Because computers, in terms of speed, they process data faster. That's the speed. It's more accurate. And then you can do so many automations. Then it can store a lot of amount of data. And we can do also multitasking. So these are also some of the reasons why people use computers. Then again, under the general concept, you have to know convergence. What is convergence? That is combining multiple functions in one device. example here, if you have your smartphone that has a camera and GPS functions that is combined in the smartphone. Then here under the convergence, you need to also know the advantages and then also disadvantages, at least two of them. Remember, multiple functions are combined, so it's convenient. That is, you can use so many functions just in one device. Cost saving also, instead of you to buy separate or different devices, you can just save by buying one device. Like smartphone these days, people use smartphone to scan instead of you to buy a scanner, and then also email and do so many tasks. So you'll be saving cost. Then portability, easier to carry one device instead of several devices with you. So it is also more portable for us. But then the disadvantages are that if it breaks or one functionality, let's say the touch screen doesn't work, then it will affect the entire system or device. So you won't be able to also use it. Right. Okay, some people are asking to send it. Please, this document, I think I shared it, but I'm going to send it again. If you go to the papers, the theory papers, which I'm going to share the link again with everyone. Please, if I make it to be editor, I do not want people to delete it for me. I want you to get access. You can download it and then also view it. So I'm going to share. When you open it, I've grouped them. These are the theory questions. There are so many questions that you can use to practice. DB papers and then question and answer, the one that I'm sharing with you today. There are so many papers there. And then again, you can find the theory materials that I'm using also in here. And then the notes also, you can find them. And some of them also, the last which question and answer, I will share them also with everyone. So I'm going to share the link over here so that you can have it. Right, and then after this lesson, it will be recorded, and then you also have access to them. Right, now let's move on to the disadvantages again. Battery can be drained. That's multiple tasks, draining the power quickly, and then replacement cost. If you are going to replace these convergent devices, they are also expensive. Right, so these are the disadvantages. You must know at least two advantages and two disadvantages, as well as the definition of it. Then also we have integration of input modes to enhance productivity. We will talk about it also is here. Then information processing cycle, the steps showing how data can become information, the series of stages. You need to know them. What is input? That is entering data into the computer, processing, that's analysis, and then manipulation of the data to become information. Output will be the displaying of the results on the screen or on hard copy. And then the storage, that is saving files for future use. Then the communication is sharing of files. They can ask you to explain any of these aspects of the information processing cycle. Like for instance, if they ask you to define the communication aspect, that is sharing of files with other people. That is the communication. Storage is keeping files, so you must know them. And then each stage, what are some of the hardware devices that are there? We will talk about it also. And then comparing hardware and software. We know that hardware is the physical component of the computer. And then the software is a set of instructions that controls the hardware. Then the peripheral device, which is the external devices that connect to the computers, like the mouse, the printer, the USB, all the external devices that are connected to the computer, we call them peripheral devices. Then also the main component of the system unit, that's the CPU, the RAM, the PSU, and then the storage devices. Then we come to the basic or the essential component of the computer. In most cases, when they ask learners about this question, they tend to talk about mouse, keyboard. No. When they talk about basic component, that is part of the computer, which is more important, or the essential component of the computer. Those are the CPU, the RAM, the storage, and then sometimes they even talk about GPU. We can also accept GPU, graphic processing unit. These components enhance the performance of the computer also. So they are the basic component of the computer. The RAM, they hold data temporary, which is volatile. And then the storage, they keep data permanently, which is non-volatile. So you need to know these also. Right, then still under the hardware, different input output storage devices. Like I already talked about, input device like mouse, scanner, webcam, microphone, fingerprint readers, and others. In most cases, they can ask you in the multiple choice. So you have to also know these. Output devices like the speakers for the audio, display, braille readers, monitors, and others. These are the output devices. Then the storage, we have primary storage and then the secondary storage. Now, when we talk about the primary storage, we are referring to the temporary storage, volatile, like the RAM, which is expensive per gigabyte, and it has faster access. So they can ask you to compare these two by giving two comparisons. So this is temporary, secondary is what? Permanent or long term. This one volatile meaning they lose the content when the power goes off. For instance, when like I'm doing my work right now, if I don't save this one, the moment I save it, they are kept on the storage. But if I don't save it, they are kept on the RAM. So when the power goes off and my computer doesn't have backup, I will lose that content. Hence, we say volatile. Then in terms of the price, the storage is more, I must say the RAM is more expensive per gigabyte than the storage. What does that mean? When you buy a storage of, let's say, 5 gig, it will be more cheaper as compared to the RAM equivalent size of RAM, which is 5 gig. So hence we say it's expensive per gigabyte than the storage. In terms of the access of the files or data, the RAM is more faster as compared to the secondary storage. Please make sure you don't say faster. Hence, I put it here as faster access of files. I didn't say faster. We must avoid writing one word answer in theory. Otherwise, you are going to lose marks. We don't put one word answer, you will not get the mark. So you can say faster, cheaper, no. Hence, I said here, devices. They can also ask you to compare SSD over HDD. Now, solid state drive is the modern storage for most of these computers. They are replacing hard drive, so they can ask you questions like that. Why are SSDs replacing HDD? Or they can also say, why is HDD still relevant these days? So now I've just separated them. First one, SSDs are faster read or write than the HDD. I did not just say faster read or write. And then also the SSD are more durable than HDD, and then energy efficient. In other words, they consume less power as compared to HDD. But then the disadvantages are that SSDs are more expensive to buy per gigabyte than the HDD. And then they also have smaller capacities than the HDD available. So these are the comparison. If they ask you, ask um, other ones, sometimes they don't even accept them. Like for instance, if you say SSD is electronic, yes, I know SSD is electronic, but then when you just write like that, they don't give you the mark. They are electronic, hence it's faster to read or write as compared to the HDD. Or you can say SSD has no moving part, hence they make room of the read or write being what faster. You don't just say no moving part. They might not give you that mark. So you can stick to these three whenever they ask you to compare these two. Again, you need to know in terms of storage, the difference between cloud storage versus cloud computing and then the grid computing. Now, the cloud storage is saving data online. When you save data online, that's cloud storage. And then the cloud computing, using the apps as well as saving data online. For instance, using Microsoft Office 365 online, using Gmail online, or maybe using apps like maybe Facebook online, using the browser, it's cloud computing. But also cloud computing also involves like the Google Drive, saving of files. Like right now I'm doing cloud computing by saving the documents also there. That's part of cloud computing. And then the grid computing, sharing the computer processing power to solve a single problem. That the keywords are these: the shared processing power in order to solve a single problem. And then grid computing, they normally use it for weather forecast. Those businesses that need high processing powers. So they try as much as possible to have different workstations somewhere, and then they share these processing powers in order to solve a single problem. And that is the great computing. You need to know these three, and then advantages and disadvantages. Remember their advantages. Remember they are using internet connectivity, so they need a faster internet connectivity. That's the limitation, disadvantages. And then you need to also know the risk when we are talking about the disadvantages, security concerns. So here, any of these, if they are talking about the disadvantages, as compared to the advantages, for the advantages, like we said, idle resources can be utilized. In terms of the great computing, idle resources can be utilized. And then also in terms of the cloud computing and then the cloud storage, you can have access to your files anywhere, regardless of the location. So access to files anywhere and then any device with internet. So these are the advantages for these two. You can have access to them using any device, whether you keep your things on your laptop, like right now, when I use my smartphone, I can also have access to it. If I go to Pretoria, I can still have access to my files. So these are the advantages. But then the disadvantages are that you need a fast internet connectivity before you can have access to them. Like if you want to use great computing, you need an internet connectivity before you can have access to them. So we have to take note of this. They can ask you the advantages and then disadvantages also. Now, the wearable devices, all the smart devices that we wear on our body, like the smart watches and then the fitness trackers, smart glasses, the Google glasses and others. These are the smart devices that we wear on our body. That's the definition of the wearable devices. Right, HDMI and then VGA, the HDMI transmits both video and then audio, and they have a higher resolution. So they can ask you to compare HDMI versus VGA in terms of their resolution or in terms of what they contain. So they have both audio and visual output, and then they have a high quality as well as the higher resolution. Right. Then the printers, we can have 3D printer. We can also have laser printer, and then also we can have inkjet. But please, they will never ask you to compare inkjet versus laser. That is not examinable, so take note. But then they can ask you to give maybe why would maybe the school use a laser printer. And then we also have MFP, multifunctional printer also. They can ask you any of these, either the definition or maybe why would they use laser or why would they use inkjet, but not to compare the two. So take note of that. So the 3D printer, they create a physical 3D models or three-dimensional models in layers, successive layers. Those are the keywords. You need to know the advantages and then disadvantages also. 3D printer can print so many models. Those are the advantages, toys and others. But then the disadvantages are that they release toxic waste. They release some toxic waste, like when you print, those things can be toxic to the environment also. So you need to know them. Right. Then the troubleshooting problems of the hardware. You have to know how to diagnose and fix issues like loose cables, printer issues, scanning issues, disk errors, and others. They can ask you maybe non-responsive application. How do you solve that? That's using um, Control Alt Delete, that's the task manager, or a printer, you were printing and then they stop printing. What might be the issue and how do you resolve them? These are some of the things. We will look at other questions also. Now, the power settings and then the protection, UPS, surge protectors, and then the power management tools that we use to prevent us from losing data, like the UPS, uninterruptible power supply. They give a backup power to the computers so that in case the main power goes off, you can still save your work without losing them. And then surge protectors also, they can also be used to protect our computers. Then the processing, regarding the processing, but before that, let me check if there's any question. Please don't forget to bring your questions and then I'll answer all your questions. Right. Then regarding the processing, processing is transforming input into useful processing or information. Then processing device like CPU, motherboard, RAM, ROM, and others. You need to know them also. RAM, we said they store temporary and others. What are the factors that influence the computer performance? They can ask you this question. Here, they are not talking about the hardware. They say the factor, that means general one. What can make your computer to perform faster or slow? The first one is CPU speed. When they mention the factors influencing the performance, do not say CPU. They did not mention the hardware. They said the factors. So here you need to mention the factor, that's the speed of the CPU, the RAM size, the storage type. Storage type meaning that SSD is faster instead of HDD, GPU power, the presence of malware. Somebody can also say background applications. Running. All these are factors that can also affect how your computer performs. Right. And then still on system technologies, you have to know the compatibility issues, that's backward compatibility, whereby new software or hardware must match the system specification. That's the compatibility. For instance, if I want to install Microsoft Word on my computer, what are some of the specifications that are needed? They will tell you maybe you need operating system Windows 11 and above. You need RAM size of 16 gig and above. You need, let's say, CPU speed of 2.5 gigahertz. So these are the compatibility issues that you need to check, that the requirements. Now, sometimes maybe you want to install, let's say, a certain software, and then that software is not compatible with Windows 10. You are using Windows 10. Then it means that you need to upgrade it in order to solve that kind of problem. Then backward compatibility is where it allows new hardware or software to work with the old system or software. For instance, backward, I'm using Office 365. I will be able to open files that were saved in Office 2013 or Office 2007, the lower versions. But if you are using Office 2013, you cannot open files that are saved in 365 because of the new features that 365 is having. So the backward, the newer software being able to open or work with the older software, and hence we call it the backward compatibility. Now, sometimes they can ask you, how to solve compatibility issues? How do you solve compatibility issues? You can get some questions like that. How do we resolve compatibility issues? One, let's say you cannot open certain files. You have to upgrade to newer version. You can also solve it by having what we call standardization. What do you mean by standardized? Meaning that having the same version. Like in our schools, maybe in your science lab, you are using Office 2016, and then the CAT lab is 365. When you go to the office, they are also using Office 2013. Now, there will be a lot of compatibility issue because when you save your work in the lab, that you save it in 365, and you want them to print something for you at the office, meanwhile they are using Office 2013. That one will not be possible. So they need to have the same at the school, the same version. That's what we call the standardization. You can also export or import, or sometimes we call it save as. Like right now, I'm having this Microsoft Word. That's why in most cases, I don't share my work. I send it in PDF. So I can export it to PDF so that everybody can use it. So save as type, then I choose PDF, then I'll be able to save it so that everybody can use that particular PDF. Right. So that is one way of solving compatibility issues. Again, you can also solve that. We can also save it in the lower version. Like if you go to File, Save As, then instead of the word .docx, you can save it in a lower version. That is the 2097 to 2003. So these are the things that you can use to remove some of the compatibility issues. Like some offices, you will see the .odt, which is open document text. So when you have such document, it's only text. You have to save it as Microsoft Word format. That is a way of solving compatibility issues. Right. Somebody might also say maybe you can also update. when you update, there's a difference between update and then upgrade. Update is the same software, you are not upgrading. So updating can sometimes also solve compatibility issues. So they are not the same update. So when you update, you are having new features on the computer or on the software. But then when you upgrade, you are going to the next or the higher version. So you can also update your software to solve compatibility issues. Right. Now, the other one is cabled and wireless connection. In most cases, they can ask you to differentiate between cabled and wireless connections. Cabled like USB or HDMI cables. They are stable, and then they are cluttered, meaning that they have wires around. They get power from the computer and less prone to interferences. But in the wireless, they are flexible or mobile, less clutter, and then use batteries also, more prone or interferences. Right, when you are far from it, they lose also the connectivity. So they are not stable also. So they can ask you to compare or maybe advantages of wireless connection over the cabled connection. And now this one, we are talking about wireless devices. It can be different wireless devices or cable devices. Like for instance, wireless mouse, wireless speaker, wireless projector. They can be specific also, but then the advantages and disadvantages are the same. Right. Then let's also look at different ports and connectors. Like for instance, the NFC, near field communication. They work or transfer files by bringing them in close proximity or tapping devices. So the NFC, they must be close to each other before they will transfer data. So that's the definition of NFC. And they are mainly common in tap to pay. If you go to shops like Pick and Pay and other shops, the tap to pay that we normally use our cards to pay, they use NFC technology, different access card, and then contactless sharing. These are the uses of NFC. Then RFID, radio frequency identification. They use radio waves to identify and track objects with text. Example is the inventory tracking. If you go to most of these shops, they also have those texts. And then also tracking devices, e-tools, they also use it. And even runners, athletes, runners, they put that track. Runners also, they can use that kind of text so that these runners to determine their position. Or even when they are going for long distance running, they can use that one to check whether no one is cheating or who crossed first. So these are some of the things that we can use RFID for. Right. And then Bluetooth. Bluetooth is short-range wireless technology for exchanging data. So Bluetooth is a short range, but then it cannot take a lot of data as compared to the NFC. Then examples that we can use Bluetooth will be headphones, like the wireless keyboard, speakers, and others. Right. So you need to know some of these things and applications of them. They can ask you some of these questions also. Then the system and then the minimum requirement. Now, the minimum requirement is the lowest hardware or software. That's the first keyword. The first keyword, the lowest hardware or software specification needed for an application to work. Now, a typical example is this. You want to install Office 365. What are the lowest hardware or software that you need? Let's say they will tell you Office 365 will need 6 GB RAM, They will say before you can install, it will also need 2.5 gigahertz CPU, and then maybe it will also need, those are the minimum requirement that they need. They can also tell you it needs maybe Windows 10 and above. Now, these are called the minimum that you need. But when it comes to the recommended one, for it to work at its full potential, or for you to enjoy using 365 so that it doesn't freeze, it works at the best performance, we call it the recommended. So these are the hardware or the software specification needed for the software to work at its full potential or smooth performance. For instance, the 365 again, for it to work 365, for you to enjoy working and saving it online and others, they can tell you maybe you need 16 gig RAM, and then you need Windows, maybe Windows 10 and above, or Windows 11. So these are the recommended one. A typical example is when you are playing games, you want to install games. There are certain games like Steam. Steam games, to be difficult to install them on a normal laptop or computer. So you need a higher graphic processing unit, and then you need also CPU speed must be faster and others. So that's the recommended one that you need. So you need to know the difference between recommended and then minimum system requirement. Right. Then also comparing power supply unit versus the UPS. Like we said, the power supply unit, they are inside the computer. That supply permanent source of power to the computer. And then the UPS, uninterruptible power supply, they are external, which is backup power. They are not inside the computer or the computing device. They are external that you connect to your computer, and they give a backup power to the computer. Right. In case the power goes off, so that one will have a constant supply of power. Then you must also look out for the surge protectors, battery with the inverters. You can also use it as an alternative to the UPS. So if they ask you how you can protect your work from being lost when the power goes off, you can also mention surge protectors and then the battery with inverters. Right now, let's move on to the other ones also. We have to also go on to the next one, like the Office 365, other software that we are going to discuss, like what is a software, types of softwares, and then the license agreement. So what we discussed were all about hardware and general concept. Then we also have software, which is the set of instructions controlling the hardware. And then the graphical user interface to interact with the operating system. For instance, the menus that you click, the buttons, and then either changing all those things on the screen, like on your screen, deleting and all those menus and buttons that you can click to interact with the operating system. That's the graphical user interface. Now, software has two categories, or I can say three categories. The system software, which is the software that manage the hardware. And then the application software for performing a specific task, like for instance, the Word and then others. So you need to know, maybe they can ask you to differentiate between them. Then also license agreement and then Creative Commons. Now the Creative Commons license is the one that allow people to share specific softwares or work under certain conditions. Like for instance, if you go to YouTube and people's work, you can have access to them, or maybe other softwares, but then there should be some conditions that you have to respect by not sharing the work to other people as if it is your own. You need to take note of that. Then the driver, like we said, is a utility program which help operating system to communicate with the hardware. An example is the printer driver or print driver, printer driver. We also have the graphic card driver, sound card driver. They assist the computers to be able to work. And these days, we don't talk about plug and play. Plug and play, now we are talking about the auto configuration. Auto configuration. This is a new term that they ask, not plug and play. Plug and play is not examinable these days. Again, now auto configuration is the same as plug and play. That is whereby operating system detect new devices. Like you connect your smartphone and it's been able to detect automatically. That is what we call the auto configuration. Then the utility programs like defragmenter, which is a utility tool that rearranges scattered files in order to speed up the computer. We have defragmentation, and then we also have optimize. But then optimize is only done on SSD. It's on SSD. Then defragmenter is for HDD. Why do we say so? Because SSD, they are not normally, files are not mostly fragmented or scattered, and as compared to defragmentation. So as compared to the HDD, they are scattered because of the nature, and then to rearrange them so that the computer will move smoothly or speed up its processing, you need to use what we call the defragmenter. But then for SSD, we normally use optimize. So right now, if I search for optimize, it gives me here defragment and then optimize drive. Defragment and then optimize drive. So because I am using SSD for my laptop, you see optimize, you don't see defragmenter. So take note. You can see here solid state drive. This is solid state drive. So if I wanted to perform better, to run more effectively, and to analyze them to find out if they need to be optimized or not, then I will just click on optimize, then it will do that for me. But then if you're using HDD, we don't use the optimize, we use what we call the defragmenter. So take note of that. These are the utility softwares that are part of the operating system. And this cleanup, which is the utility that delays unnecessary files in order to free up space. Like you mostly find this one in your smartphones, that you must delete to clean space. So that's the disk cleanup. And backup is making copies of files in case you accidentally delete them. So backup is a temporary, but then archive is a long term. So the archive, you make a long-term backup or copies for history or anything. Let's say you have old pictures that you want to keep them somewhere, or let's say your marks from grade 1, grade 2, then the school will keep them on a CD or any storage medium. So that's archive, which is different from backup. Backup can be you make it today, and then tomorrow maybe you delete it, then you go for it. You must take note of these two. Functions of operating system, they normally ask this. Providing graphical user interface, at least you must know 2 or 3. They manage hardware or software or files. They provide security also, like login, password. They also provide these utilities and others. So you must know at least 2 or 3 of the, they always ask you to give maybe 2. Then the file management compression, like when you compress, you reduce the size of the file, and then you decompress to extract it also. Now, compression software, there are so many formats like WinZip, .zip, RAR, and then 7Z. is also example of it. They can ask you to give some of the file format of the compression software. And then we also have software installation. When you are installing software, what kind of medium can you install from? Either you install online, or you install from flash drive or CD, or you can also install from network drives. There might be a software on a server or network drive that you can also install from it. So these are ways of installing software. And then how to update software, bug, patch, service pack, and others. Now, a bug is a software error. And then the patch is an update that fixes a bug. Then the service pack, group of patches over a certain period of time. Like for instance, maybe in 6 months, then we call it service pack. Windows used to have service pack 1, service pack 2, like that before they came with the Windows 10 and Windows 11. Then the version of a software, the software type that has a new feature, that's the version of a software. Now, when you have new features like 365 is a version of Microsoft Office, which has MS365, which has MS365, which has new features. Like for instance, it's having some functions in spreadsheet like if, lookup, and others, which you cannot find it in other versions also. So some of these are what you call the versions. When you increase or you upgrade, you get new features from it. Right. So you need to know this. And how do you do these backups and others like scheduler and others? You need to know some of these definitions. Then the web-based versus installed application, software that you can use online, we call it web-based, or sometimes we call it online software. They depend on internet. If you don't have internet, you cannot use it. Then they also update automatically, less features, back up automatically, software access anytime, anywhere, easier collaboration, and easier to share with others. So these are some of the advantages, but then the disadvantages are that you need a faster internet connectivity. Then the installed application, they are kept on the local disk. They have more features and not internet dependent. Like this one here, I installed a 365. It has more features. If you use 365 on the internet, there are other features that might not be available to you. Like, so here you have more features like that. Now, software for users with disability, we will look at that also. Software accessibility features like speech to text, screen readers, captions, subtitles, magnifier, on-screen keyboard. They can ask you to give based on a specific user, which I've also elaborated them down here. We are going to discuss it also. And then the risk of flawed software. Flawed software is the software with a bug, error. Now, if a software is having an error, what kind of consequences might you, or the risk that you might encounter? Crashes, data loss, vulnerable to malware and cyber attacks, or security issues. Now, classifying software also based on the license, like we have the freeware, whereby you can use it for free. Use a software for free, like using Microsoft, Microsoft is not for free. Using maybe any software from your, like some browsers are for free. You can download and use it for free. Proprietary software, they are paid. They are not for free. And then the source code is not available to you. Like this 365, we buy it, and then you cannot edit the source code. Then FOSS, which is free open source software. FOSS stands for free open source software. They are software that can be freely used. They can be modified in terms of the source code. Then you make changes. Like Linux is one example of the force software. Java is also one example. Shareware is a trial software that you can use for a specific period of time. Then after that, you pay or you buy it. Like for instance, you can use for 3 months or 1 month, sometimes even 1 week. You call it trial software. And then the standalone software, the software that comes as one, and then integrated software, they comes as a bundle. There are so many that are put together. There's no way that they are going to ask you to differentiate between these two, but then they might ask you to maybe explain one, not to differentiate. The new exam guideline, it is stipulated there. Then the metadata, additional information about the data or file. For instance, we have the author, the file type, the date created, and others. If you go to the other files like this, when you right click and you go to the properties, it's going to give you the metadata. When you go to the details, you can see the name, the type, the folder, and others. So these are the other properties of the file. The date modified, you can find all of them there. So these are the properties of the file. Or you can even, from Microsoft Word, you can get those properties from file info. Then you see all these properties. These are the metadata, the text, the title, the words, the categories. There are so many of them that you can have. Right. And then also types of computer users, personal user, SOHO, and others. The personal user, person who use computers at their home for entertainment or personal tasks like typing. A SOHO, they use computers at their business, small business, or in a small setup. And then the mobile user, they rely on portable device like laptops, tablet, then on the move. So you must know how to define each of them and what are the some of the softwares and hardware that each user might also need. Power user, they need a high-end performance computers, mostly for video editing, gaming, and programming. All those ones, architects, those people, they are called power users. Enterprise users are the large organizations whereby individuals use their computers. Like in the school setup, the computer that we have in the school is enterprise user if they are connected to the network. And if you go to other businesses, they are also using the computers also there. Then we talk about the types of computing devices like desktop computer is stationary. They are good performance. They are used in offices and our homes. Laptops, why do we need laptop instead of desktop? They are portable. They can ask you to differentiate that. Battery powered, suitable for mobile use. That means you can move around. Tablet, smaller size, touch screen is also available and for multimedia browsing. And then smartphones also is handheld. They combine multiple functions also together. A server, more powerful computer, which shares resources to client computers. Mainframe and supercomputer, those are the powerful computers, mostly for large calculations and the scientific calculations. Then embedded, we talk about them. Single purpose, wearable devices, we discuss also. The devices that we wear on our body. Then thin client and then fat client computer. There was a year that they asked that question in a scenario base. The thin client computers, some computers are using, or some schools are using thin client computers. They are very small sizes that are connected to the server. So they are minimal hardware relying on a network server for resources. Then the fat client computer, those big computers that are in other computers, they are not small, they are big ones that they can also be connected to a network. Then we need to also know integration of input modes to enhance productivity. That is whereby you use multiple ways used to enter data or command into the device. For example, if you go to Pick and Pay, they can use touch screen to type. They can also use keyboard to also type. If the touch screen is not working, they can use the keyboard. If the keyboard is also not working, they can use the barcode scanner to scan it also. So you have to know this. A typical example is the touch screen versus the keyboard that you might have on your smartphones or maybe laptop. The two-in-one laptops, you might have the one that you can touch, and then you can also use the keyboard. So if your keyboard is giving you problem, you can use the touch screen. And then voice input versus also typing is also another example of integration of input mode to enhance productivity. Then, like I discussed earlier, the disability types and then the hardware and software that they might need. Visually impaired, they will need screen reader device. If they are talking about hardware, you don't mention the software. If they are talking about software, screen reader is acceptable, but hardware, we have screen reader devices also, or braille display. We have braille keyboard. We also have audio output devices like headphones. We have the magnification devices. We have the tactile keyboard. We have the braille printers also. These are the devices for someone who have blind or low vision, visually impaired. Now, hearing impaired, what are some of the devices that they need? They need visual alert system or devices. Don't just mention visual alert. Here, the question is talking about the hardware devices. They also have captioning devices. There's a captioning software and then captioning devices. The captioning devices, the wearable devices that they can wear, that will do or maybe convert that one for them into text. They are wearable devices that are available. Then we also have the hearing aids or listening devices. Then the mobility or the motor disability, ergonomic keyboard or adaptive keyboard. We have the foot pedals or switches, trackballs, and then joysticks and adapted mice also. Voice control devices, microphone, or sip and puff. These are some of the devices for that type of user. And then we also have here cognitive one, specialized input devices that they give them like screen readers and text-to-speech devices. So these are some of the hardware devices for different disability types that you have to take note. Now, that brings to an end of the system technologies. There was one important thing that I forgot about. I think I will discuss it there, keylogger. By keylogger, they can also ask it in the social implications. So we will discuss it also. These are the hardware or software that record keystroke. So it can also be here. So they are hardware or software keystrokes. So that's the keylogger. You need to also know that. Right, let me check if there's no question. Then I'll move straight to network and then internet technologies. After the lesson, I will break them down also. Let's check if there are no questions. Someone say, is it safe to study the last push? Yes, you can with this note here. It is compiled from your ATP and everything on what to use to study, because the exam asks questions from different resources and not from textbook. Yeah, that is why we are not using textbooks here. We focus on ATP and exam guideline. The examiners cannot ask you questions outside the exam guideline. Only that they ask it in a form. Remember, you are doing computer applications technology. they can let you apply it, but then the questions, the topics are the same. The topics are the same. So as you can see here, I have a number of questions here that I also indicated. You can see here, these are sampled questions based on what I've discussed. Areas where computers can save money, financial benefits, so they can ask you that. Examples of where computer ensure accuracy, resources saved, how VoIP save money. So these are talking about how we can save money, but then they ask it in different ways. Resources saved through computers, papers, and others. Now, when it comes to this one, essential computer, like we discussed it, CPU, RAM, and then GPU, meaning of Linux platform. I talk about it like Linux platform is they run on an operating system, which is the and a typical example of free open source software. Difference between server and ordinary PC. So you can see they ask it in a different way. Advantages of laptops over desktop, we discussed it. Also, power user definition. Convergence and advantages and disadvantages of convergence. These are questions from previous question papers. It is not just that I've just created. I pick it from different or sampled question papers. Definition of input mode. And then, so you can see definition of metadata, examples of metadata, difference between read-only and hidden files. Read-only, the file can be viewed. This question came last year. The file can be viewed but not edited. Hidden files, they are not visible to users, usually for system and security purpose. This was last year question paper. Examples of metadata was also last year question paper. Importance of offline backup. Why do you have to backup offline? You can get access to without internet, faster to restore, protection against ransomware and other malwares also. But here is ransomware, no subscription needed. Look at the way I gave the answers also, the keywords. You don't have to write too much. Keywords are very important. Why backup is not on the same location? Because of theft, or maybe your work or your computer might crash or others, so you don't put it on the same location. Benefit of cloud storage: scalable, it saves space on the local device, data safety, easier sharing and collaboration. File extension for compressed files, zip, ref, Z7-zip, and others. You know, I've talked about all this in the explanation, but then the questions are from that also. Disadvantages of 3D printer: slow process, it gives films or different order of file smell, low strength, and then expensive also to use, job losses and others. Definition of 3D printer, uses of 3D printer. You need to know some of these content also. Functions of operating system. They keep on asking that type of question. Providing basic security, providing GUI and others. What is utility software and examples also. Definition of defragmentation. Last year question paper, it was there. They asked that question. Definition of archive, long term, ways to reduce electricity usage, and then why notebook is not used these days, reason for updating operating system to fix bug, improve security, and compatibility issues. A difference between patch and service pack, definition of a software version, new features, specific release of a software indicating update or new features. So you can see definition of a scheduler is operating system utility software which manage and schedule tasks or program to run automatically at different times. They can ask you this type of question. Risk of that: steps to close and non-responding applications using task manager, by pressing Ctrl Alt Delete and then use Task Manager, or you right click and choose Task Manager, then you go to End Task. So some of these things, why open Task Manager if slow? To see the running processes and ending the Task Manager. Advantages of touch screen. So these are sample questions, please. You can see here output devices for disabled users. How to reduce data usage during video calls, switch off videos and others. So there's no way that they're going to ask questions outside your scope. Reasons for reducing the files, to save space for easier emails and others. So all these criteria for selecting a printer. What are some of the factors to consider when selecting a printer? They like asking this type of questions. That is speed, the quality or the resolution, the paper type, durability, the size of the printer, the color depth, the connectivity, and the compatibility issues. Then what is printer queue? That is storing, printing, or multiple jobs in a queue. And then they send the jobs to the printer in certain order, which at the printer queue you can delete or pause or give a prioritized job, which one should be printed first. So they can ask you some of these questions, what you have to do at the printer queue. Then spooling. Spooling is different from spoofing. I saw some learners, there was a time we gave them questions, they asked spooling, but they were answering spoofing. Spooling is a process of storing print jobs temporarily on a printer before they store. So when you send the printer job, they are kept in a specific place called printer queue. So that place is called the spooling or spooler. They store it temporarily there. And then what can you do at the spooler? You can view, you can pause, you can cancel, reorder, and restart the job. They can ask you this type of questions also. Ways to connect printers, either through USB or Wi-Fi. What's the default printer meaning? And then green computing, how to ensure green computing. Printing only when necessary. Print duplex, that's double-sided. Print multiple pages per sheet. Use print preview, recycle paper, and others. Benefit of UPS. UPS, they give a temporary power. They prevent data loss, surge protection, and others. Now, add-ons, extension, drivers, all these questions, we have addressed them in the notes also. Causes of application not working, and then reason for automatic update or backup. It saves time, it's done regularly, and then also backup policies, specific location and medium, synchronization, you must know it, backward compatibility, like we just discussed it, telecommuting, working from home, recommended, and others. All these questions, digital divide, all these questions were addressed in the notes. So please, all that I will ask you is that study the notes first. After that, then you come and use this question and answer. Look at the way I answered them. Monitor specification, aspect to consider, aspect ratio, contrast ratio, refresh rate. You need to know all of them, these questions also. And then when you are done with them, there are a number of questions. There are a number of the NFC VR, not enough space is going to assist you. All these questions were addressed. So please, I will urge you to use these question and answers together with the notes, the one that I'm discussing with you right now. Right, if there are no questions, we will move straight to network and then internet technologies, what you should look out for. Now, network and internet technologies. The first part is basic network, the definition of a network, connection of two or more computers or computing devices to share resources. Very important. Aims and objectives of a network: facilitate communication, data sharing, and centralized data. But the benefits are that, or the advantages: sharing hardware and software, internet access, data exchange or transfer, easier collaboration, and so many. At least you need to know 2 of them. Then disadvantages of network: security risk. Do not explain yourself, just say security risk or security issues. Privacy issues. Don't explain what the privacy issue is, and do not be writing hacking and what. Just say security concerns or security issues whenever they ask disadvantages of network. Right. Then different types of network, like the local area network, at the home, limited in a small geographical area, GAN, global